Hey everybody. In honor of Mother's Day, that is actually 2 days away, I am especially excited to celebrate Mother's Day for a couple of reasons. But I wanted to jump on and share my story, share what happened in my life, and I hope that it's an encouragement to somebody else who is going through some challenges, who may have lost a child, who may still be struggling with infertility. I wanted to let you know that God is still able. Um, so many of you may or may not know that I had been married for 10 years and had been trying to get pregnant and was unsuccessful. I had no reason to believe that I could be pregnant other than my faith, because at the age of 37, I had never been pregnant in my life. And so this particular summer, I'll never forget, it was June 2013. Of course, my period came on, and it lasted 2 days and it just went off. And so I had taken so many pregnancy tests in the past, over the past 10 years, that I was like, I'm not taking another pregnancy test. By the time I figure out I'm pregnant, I'll be 6 months pregnant, because I had been disappointed so many times. I had gone through so many treatments. I had gone through the artificial inseminations. I had gone through the follicle stem injections monthly, spent thousands of dollars trying to get pregnant, and could not get pregnant. And the final straw that made me decide I'm not going through any treatments, I'm just going to trust God, was I had gone through a treatment with the local fertility office here in Mobile and had gotten a false pregnancy, a false positive. And the provider called me and said, "Holly, it looks like it's positive." Well, after about a week, she did the blood work and she had to call me and tell me that it was a false positive. And at that time, I made up my mind, I'm not taking any more treatments. I'm not putting myself through that emotional pain. I'm not going to put my husband through that. We're going to believe God. And until God tells me it's not going to happen, I'm going to believe that it is. I had people telling me who did not know that I was going through the fertility struggle. I had people telling me things like, just stop being selfish and give your man a baby. Stop being selfish and put your career on hold and have a baby. How long you gonna wait? I had people making fun of me. I had people cracking jokes about why I couldn't get pregnant. I know that people were teasing my husband about why I had not gotten pregnant, and he never ever exposed me. He never said, "Well, Holly has an issue." He just took it and loved on me, and I always love him for that. I had people blaming me for being selfish. As I said, I had people saying that I was just neglectful and I was going to be an old maid. And I even had people telling me, well, maybe it's just not the Lord's will. And my response to them was, well, until God tells me it's not his will, I'm going to believe that it is. So I had decided I wasn't taking any more treatments. So fast forward, here we are in June 2013. I've been married 10 years. And there again, like I said, my period came on and it lasted for 2 months. So it didn't dawn on me that I was pregnant. I was running. The Lord had blessed me to get in the best shape of my life. I was running 3 and 4 miles a day. When I would run, I was exercising 4 or 5 days a week. And I was just really at the best version of myself physically. And so I began to notice that some things were changing in my body. And it will never forget, it was about, my husband was out of town. It must have been about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I decided to take a pregnancy test, and it was positive. And I remember just breaking down, and my brother had spent the night with me, and I remember running in his room screaming and crying and telling him how faithful God was, and we were so excited. Fast forward to right at the beginning of my second trimester. So we're excited. We're telling people that, we're expecting, and so I go for my ultrasound. All right, we get there, and the doctor, phenomenal physician here in Mobile, Alabama, she was excited. This was her first time. Well, this was her first ultrasound with me, and so we were really excited, really happy. And she decided, well, let's go ahead and confirm how far along we are, make sure he's growing, and so forth and so on. So went in, had the ultrasound, and my husband and I saw him on the screen. We saw him laying there. And at that time, by me being a nurse practitioner, you would have thought that I would have realized that we didn't hear a heartbeat. But here I am, 37, and I had never been pregnant. So it didn't dawn on me that his heart was not beating. And so the ultrasound tech she says, well, Holly, she said, he's not measuring at the weeks that, we had estimated he would be. So let's just let the doctor talk to you. And I said, well, that's fine. And so we're walking back. I'm walking on cloud 9. We got a chance to see him on the ultrasound screen, and I'm just so excited. So we get back in the exam room, and Otis and I are standing there waiting, and she walks in and she's holding onto the doorknob, and she just turns and looks at me and she says, "Holly, I don't think he made it." And I couldn't grasp what she was saying. I said, what do you mean you don't think he made it? She said, "I think he's passed away." And I just remember screaming, "What? Why?" And I remember my husband running to grab me to keep me from falling off the exam table. And I just remember being so devastated and so hurt. And as I got down off the table, she said, "Well, I want you to come back on Monday." This was a Friday. "I want you to come back on Monday, and we'll check and see if maybe there was we'll just have to confirm it. And if he still didn't have a heartbeat, I'm going to have to take him." And I remember getting off the table, and I remember walking out of the doctor's office, not even out of the doctor's exam room, and I remember collapsing against the wall. I don't even remember how I got up. I just remember me and my husband, the next memory I have is my husband and I riding in the car and him saying, "I just don't know what we're supposed to learn from this." And I remember going home, and I remember watching the TV, and the TV wasn't even on. And I was so devastated. I couldn't imagine, and I was feeling so much anger. How could this be? How could God have blessed me to be pregnant and then to take him from me? And I was so angry. And I know people say you're not supposed to be angry with God, but I was so angry. I was so angry. I felt betrayed. I felt just devastated. God, I stood in faith. I believed even when the doctor said there was a slim chance. How can this be? And we made it through that night, and I remember my husband calling me on the phone, and I remember him saying, "Holly," he said, "listen," he said, "I want you to get up, and I want you to get yourself together, and we're going to look at this as a sign that it can happen." Because remember, before then, I had never been pregnant. I had no evidence that I could get pregnant other than my faith in God. And I got up, and my heart was so heavy, but I knew that I had to pull myself together, and I knew that I had to move forward. No matter what, I knew I had to go on with life. I remember saying, "God, you took him, and you should have took me too." I was just that devastated. But that wasn't the end of the story. And so I remember his due date was April the 19th. And so as the months went on, it got December, and January came, and February came, and I could feel myself kind of going back down on a slope, because I'm supposed to be preparing for my son to be here. I'm supposed to be preparing for his delivery, and here I have nothing to deliver. He's already gone to be back with the Lord. And I never forget, it was March, and I realized once again I got my period, but it only stayed on one day, and it just all of a sudden went off. And I thought, didn't really pay attention to it, because I was accustomed to maybe skipping a day or two. But then I remembered how my body started to feel the first time, and things started to change. And I took a pregnancy test at the end of March, and I was pregnant with Amir. And it's like God knew, he saw where I was headed, and he came in and just rescued me. And of course, many of you know I went on to have him, and I had another son 15 months later. And so Mother's Day is very special for me, because it took me a long time to have that label. And although I call myself that in the spirit, I'm a mother, whether I have birthed any children or not, I still believe God. And many people bought me cards on Mother's Day and would encourage me to tell me, "Hey, Holly, it's still going to happen." But Mother's Day is precious to me, because it's something that God gifted me with. And so for those of you who are still challenged with infertility, those of you who have lost a child, know that God is still able, that he is a God of perfect timing. When they play the song, "He is my promise keeper. He's my light in the darkness." Truly, God is my promise keeper. He is a keeper of his word. And for those of you who people may be saying it's not going to happen, it can't happen, tell them, until God tells me it's not going to happen, I'm going to believe it will. Happy Mother's Day. Don't forget to visit me at isurvive.me to catch up with my blog. And of course, my clinic is bewellclinicmobile.com. It's my prayer that someone will be encouraged, that they will move forward and step forward and truly access all that God has for them. Happy Mother's Day.